welcome back to OpenLine, talking about the marijuana ordinance that is now before the Metro Council. We have up here the sponsor of the bill, a supporter of the bill, another supporter of the bill who's not on the council. So we have, it's loaded up here in support of the bill. We will have the other side on a morning line next week, but it's interesting to hear the perspective here, and I'm glad to have the conversation. Let's go to Jay. Jay, hello.
Hello, thanks for taking my call.
Go right ahead.
Yeah, I have no problem with it being used for, medical marijuana, and I've been around people that smoked it, and, it doesn't bother me. But, I look at it this way, in the state of Tennessee, especially in Murray County, they've built so many wineries, and they're building distilleries everywhere. And there's been, a gentleman was at one of the wineries, and he accidentally had too much to drink, and he ran off the road and got killed. I just wondered what your thoughts were. To me, I think if, you can do all this with the wineries and the distilleries, you ought to have some kind of ordinance, and you can do this. And I'll hang up and listen. Thanks.
It's an interesting point about alcohol, because some scientific data just recently came out that cannabis is actually 114 times safer than alcohol, something that we have in almost every grocery store in the state of Tennessee. And the other issue with driving in cannabis, obviously that should be a concern for everyone. The National Highway Safety and Transportation Administration did one of the most comprehensive studies of its kind recently, and they found out that cannabis use did not increase your risk of crashing a vehicle. So this kind of data is very significant when it comes to making policy decisions about use and driving and behavior when it comes to public safety and public health and cannabis.
Again, I guess people on the other side might say the only argument I've heard is a gateway sort of drug.
Yeah.
Now, if we say it's okay to our kids to use a little bit, then maybe they get into another drug, and it's just a slippery slope.
Well, let's be clear. We don't advocate for the use of cannabis by children or teenagers. The theory of cannabis being a gateway drug has been disproven. It's actually alcohol and tobacco that are the gateway drugs. People normally start out with alcohol and tobacco and move on to harder substances. So that's been disproven by several medical institutions.
Yeah, the argument people try to make when they say it's a gateway drug is this percentage of people who use real drugs smoked marijuana first. Well, I bet that 95 to 100% of them had eaten a cheeseburger in their life sometime before they did these hard drugs. The fact that something comes after something, correlation does not equal causation.
And what do you think of that, Artie? I'm sure you hear it.
Well, I also want to bring us back to the fact that we're not advocating in this bill that we're legalizing marijuana. This is has a decriminalization component, and as Dave said earlier, all it is doing is offering an alternative to the state law here in Davidson County to the kind of punishment that someone would get if they're charged. So this bill doesn't advocate legalization, but if you want to have that conversation, then I'm happy to go down that road with you in advocacy for it. But Dave and I don't really have the authority to even go down that road now. So
it's a lower the penalty bill.
That's what it's to give an option to basically keep it off your criminal record, lower the penalty. Could be a $50 civil penalty instead of a criminal record, because quite honestly, kids coming out of here, an 18-year-old gets caught with a joint in his pocket and gets a drug charge. That is a significant hamper to that individual as he walks through life, he or she. This will keep that from happening.
All right, we were going to go to Tammy. We're not going to go to Tammy now. She just hung up, but you call back Tammy. Now, all right, when we talk about prison reform, one of the things you talk about is crack cocaine and the injustices that some of the sentencing laws have that are associated with crack cocaine. Also, that helps fill our prisons, and that's been a big issue with prison reform. Do you think this is a similar issue? Is marijuana part of prison reform, or is that going too far? And why don't you take that?
Well, this country has 5% of the world's population, and we have 25% of the world's prisoners. So to say that prison reform is not a significant issue that we need to address is, we definitely need to. I think that as far as the drug war in general goes, that's contributing to our high prison populations. So I think either of you could add to that issue.
To your point about prison reform and marijuana, well, there are people in prison now for long prison terms relating to marijuana charges. So if that's what you mean by getting that into discussion, you know, if you want to go down that road, then it is something you can talk about, because this is not going to put anybody in prison.
Right.
It's a misdemeanor charge, and they'll spend time in the county jail if the state law is violated. And there are some state laws and some federal laws that could put it up on the street on like a 3-strike provision, but on its face, this law is not going to put anybody in prison. Keep in mind there's a difference between jail and prison. But there are people in prison for more serious marijuana charges, but that again is a different discussion that has nothing to do with this bill.
And do you see this? Are there people in our county jail as a result of a fourth an ounce of less of marijuana? I mean, does this relieve some problem as far as that's concerned?
Well, there is. If you're arrested, you are going to jail for a little while, even if it's just through the process.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, when you look at the conversation around prison reform, criminal justice reform in general, a lot of what's driving that is discrepant, you know, racial disparities, socioeconomic disparities, and that sort of thing. And this would hopefully address that by giving police officers this additional option.
How many? So where do we stand? And you may have gone through this, but I want to clarify that. How many other communities have passed something just like this?
We know there are several cities in in Florida that have done very similar things. Florida state law is similar to Tennessee state law, and West Palm Beach County, Miami, Tampa, say Orlando also.
I think possibly Orlando, Philadelphia.
Number of
Pittsburgh,
cities over the last year or two, especially.
And is this written? How did you go about writing this?
It was modeled after what they did in Florida, and also was careful not to touch anything that's considered a felony. So it's just like very basic, you know, less than half an ounce, possession. You're not allowed to go out and use it. You're not allowed to go out and sell it. Not allowed to go out and grow it. All this says is that if you've got it on it, police have the option of using this additional tool.
And so, as we said at the top of the show, there was a concern raised by the police department. You said you had been talking with them. When you go to put together something like this, do you call up the chief, or you call up the police department? What sort of discussions did you have? How did this begin as far as discussions?
I spoke with the lawyer in our council office, spoke with the mayor's office, the DA, the chief, all got their input, and then we drafted the legislation. There was a bit of a miscommunication where I thought that the police were satisfied with the law as it's written. I learned that's not the case, and that's why we're going to go back and amend it. But we had a lot of conversations along the way, also with various attorneys, people with experience in this realm who have the expertise to talk about what this means.
You don't feel like the issue with the police, that's going to be a problem? You think?
I don't. I really don't, because Dave and I are both committed. Now, I will say this is Dave's bill, and he's done an awful lot of work on it, and he's to be commended. I'm late to the party. You know, I usually am, and I certainly was this time. But when I heard about this thing, I'm like, man, I would love to come in here and help you, because I really believe in this bill, and I believe in this concept. And to your point about the police department, though, I went right to them, and you know, unfortunately, the sunshine laws don't let Dave and I talk to each other about this bill outside of a public setting. So we have to do our own thing independent from one another, and we've been working with the police department all along, ever since we got in this bill, and conceptually I think they're fine with it, and I believe Dave is doing a fine job of working out that language with them now, and once it gets worked out so that they don't want any unintended consequences out of the bill. That's the whole point. And if we can work that out, then I think this will be fine. And I think we will be able to do that by the time we make it to committee. Don't you?
I do.
Did your constituents come to you? Was this an issue as you ran for office? What brought it to your attention?
It's a philosophical argument, largely. It falls in line with my political beliefs, and it's something that needs to be, you hear a lot about the criminal justice reform that's going on, and a lot of that's of what's happening around the country. And when I saw some of the laws being passed in Florida and learned about them a little bit more, it became clear this is something we should do. And I'm absolutely thrilled with the feedback that we've gotten from constituents, from people across the city. It's been overwhelmingly positive.
And is it your organization? Has it been talking to lawmakers about this, pushing this kind of thing, or what have you all been doing?
We spent a significant amount of time educating lawmakers at the state level during legislative session, and we are working with city council members and educating them on this issue specific to the public health and public safety data on this issue. And going back to law enforcement, when you speak to members of law enforcement, by and large, they don't have an issue with getting rid of laws specific to cannabis. They really don't have any problems with cannabis when it comes to law enforcement. That's not the big danger that is. It doesn't pose a great danger to them like alcohol-fueled incidents or other drug-fueled incidents. You don't have the kind of violence with people that use cannabis like you do with alcohol or other dangerous drugs. In fact, domestic violence, there's been data that's shown domestic violence to go down when cannabis use is involved.
Before we go to break, I want to take one call, then we'll take some more. Let's go to Braden. Braden, what's on your mind? Wait a minute. Braden, are you there?
Points.
Go right ahead, Braden.
Okay, can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can now. Go ahead.
Would you mind just laying out in 3 quick points what exactly this ordinance means for the common taxpayer here in Tennessee?
Okay. The common taxpayer, what does this ordinance mean?
Outside of Nashville, absolutely nothing. Here in Nashville, it means that less of your taxpayer dollars will go to incarcerate people for this, and will go farther by allowing police to stay on the streets to address serious crime. It means a little bit of an increase in personal liberty at the discretion of law enforcement. And gosh, you got a third?
Well, it sounds like an economic question to me. He said taxpayer, so I guess he's talking about money. And to the point of economics, you're saving the police department money. They're not having to go out there and spend the kind of time and the hours they are doing the things they have to do now. You're saving the prosecutor's office money because they're not having to expend money prosecuting these cases like they would ordinarily. You're saving the public defender's office money. And, the fine that they will pay goes right into the Davidson County coffers, which is something we don't get now. So that's the economic side of the argument, and he's just made a number of other arguments as well. And let me say to your other point earlier, Dave didn't lick his finger and stick it in the air and see which way the wind blow on this. He took a bold step here. He really did. He launched out there, and he didn't do it with any polls, because this can be a really controversial issue. Now, we've gotten great feedback so far, but he didn't know he was going to get that kind of feedback. So I just want to publicly commend him for taking this bold step, because I believe it's the right thing to do, and that's why he did it. Not because somebody pushed him into it, because it's the right thing, and that's where his heart's at.
Well, the most recent polling data is showing about 60% of the public supports full legalization of cannabis, and it's around 75% for medical. So the public
Would that
is
be
behind.
National, or would that be in
That's
Tennessee?
national.
Okay.
Tennessee's
75
numbers
is
vary a little differently.
Tennessee?
I mean, we've got a pretty high number for medical. It's not as high
Over
for
70.
recreational or recreational legalization.
So there's no doubt this is a major debate the country is having, and it's going to be on the ballot in many states here in
Yeah, at
November.
least 5 states are going to have some form of legalization on the ballot in November of 2016.
All right, we're going to take a break. If you're on the line, hold on. We'll get to your calls. So if you're on the line right now, hold on. We're going to take a break. We'll take your calls right after this.